Every founder dreams of being the next unicorn story, the one investors talk about for years, as an example of vision, grit, and execution. But behind every success story are dozens of ventures that didn't make it, companies that raised millions or even billions only to collapse into obscurity. In fact, over $100 billion in venture capital has been poured into startups that no longer exist. This staggering number isn't just a testament to risk, it's a treasure trove of lessons. Each failed company leaves behind a postmortem, a story about what went wrong, and those stories are invaluable. Postmortems transform abstract concepts into visceral lessons. They expose patterns of misjudgment, capital misallocation, and execution blindness. When studied honestly, they become one of the most powerful learning tools in entrepreneurship. By looking closely at spectacular failures like Quibi, Juicero, Fab.com, and Theranos, we gain insights that can prevent our own ventures from repeating history. Failure data is a gift if you know how to use it. The first reason postmortems matter is real learning. Reading about failure turns abstract warnings into visceral truths. When you see the details of $1 billion collapse, the lessons stick in ways that theory alone never could. The second reason is about compound effects. In startups, small mistakes rarely stay small. A pricing error, a poor hire, or a missed assumption can cascade into massive problems. Postmortems reveal how these chains form, helping you prevent a single crack from becoming a collapse. The third is pattern recognition. When you study enough failures, you develop entrepreneurial intuition. You start spotting red flags before they become fatal. That intuition becomes a competitive edge. Finally, there's ecosystem growth. Transparency around failure strengthens the entire startup ecosystem. It democratizes hard won wisdom, making it available not just to insiders, but to every founder willing to listen. In short, failure is expensive tuition, but if we learn from others' mistakes, we don't have to pay the full price ourselves. Quibi stands out as one of the most dramatic failures in recent memory. With $1.7 billion raised, A-list Hollywood talent, and a bold vision for mobile-first video, Quibi promised to revolutionize entertainment. The concept was quick bites, premium short-form video designed for mobile. The founders believed people wanted high production value content in snackable segments, but reality had other plans. Users didn't want expensive, studio produced shorts. They wanted free, social, user generated content on platforms like TikTok and YouTube. Quibi lacked social sharing features, which in a social first media world was a fatal oversight. The timing couldn't have been worse. Quibi launched during COVID, when people were stuck at home and consuming content on large screens, not on the go mobile devices. The lesson from Quibi is blunt. No amount of funding or star power can compensate for a fundamental misreading of market demand. Distribution beats production every time. Understanding customer behavior is far more important than dazzling them with expensive innovation they never asked for. Juicero became infamous for its over-engineered solution to a problem no one really had. The product was a $699 Wi-Fi-enabled juicing machine that only worked with proprietary $5 to $8 juice packs. These packs even included QR codes for authentication. But the fatal flaw was discovered by journalists. You could squeeze the packs by hand and get nearly the same result. The machine, in other words, was unnecessary. This discovery turned Juicero into a punchline. The company had poured immense resources into engineering complexity for a problem consumers didn't consider painful. The lesson here is that over-engineering can be as dangerous as under-engineering. Solving problems that aren't urgent or real creates innovation that nobody needs. As one Juicero executive admitted, they consistently over engineered solutions to problems that weren't sufficiently painful. The insight is simple: focus on problems that hurt. Customers don't pay for novelty, they pay for relief. Fab.com is a case study in how hypergrowth can amplify flaws instead of curing them. In 2011, Fab launched as a flash sale design marketplace. It generated massive buzz through viral marketing and celebrity endorsements. Early growth looked impressive. By 2012, they had raised $165 million, expanded internationally, and hired aggressively. On paper, revenue soared, but the underlying economics were broken. Customer acquisition costs exceeded lifetime value, and churn was sky high. Growth wasn't sustainable, it was a mirage. By 2013, reality hit. The company was essentially buying temporary users at a loss. With retention collapsing, all the flashy numbers meant little. By 2015, Fab.com had burned through $336 million and sold for just $15 million. The key insight is that growth is not inherently good. Growth amplifies both strengths and weaknesses. Without retention and healthy unit economics, growth simply speeds up the collapse. For founders, retention is more important than acquisition. If customers don't stick, growth is just expensive noise. Theranos represents perhaps the most infamous startup collapse of all time. The company promised revolutionary blood testing technology, hundreds of tests from a single drop of blood, disrupting a $70 billion industry. The story captured imaginations, drew billions in investment, and made its founder, Elizabeth Holmes, a Silicon Valley icon. But it was all a mirage. The technology never worked. Theranos used traditional machines, diluted samples, and produced unreliable results. Patients were misled, and lives were put at risk. Eventually, whistleblowers, journalists, and regulators exposed the fraud. Investigations revealed a culture of secrecy and deception, not transparency and validation. Holmes was convicted of fraud and sentenced to prison. The fundamental truth is this: in regulated industries, hype cannot replace science. Secrecy cannot replace validation. Startups may thrive on vision, but when health and safety are at stake, proof of concept and transparent validation are non-negotiable. The Theranos case is a warning against the dangers of overhype, lack of accountability, and the toxic culture of fake it till you make it pushed too far. When you step back from individual stories, universal patterns emerge. The first is demand misjudgment. Many failed startups built solutions for problems that weren't painful enough or completely misread customer preferences. Quibi misread entertainment habits. Juicero misread demand for complexity. Theranos outright fabricated demand. The second is capital misallocation. Too much funding too soon creates false confidence. Instead of forcing startups to confront flawed models early, abundant capital masks problems until it's too late. Both Quibi and Fab.com burned through mountains of cash while ignoring fundamentals. The third is execution blindness. Many failed startups focused on vanity metrics, buzz, downloads, or PR, rather than the fundamentals like retention, unit economics, and sustainable growth. Fab.com exemplified this trap. The overarching truth is this: successful founders use postmortems as a playbook of what not to do. They turn the expensive mistakes of others into their competitive advantage. Failure is painful, but if you learn from it, it becomes priceless. Postmortems are not morbid exercises. They are roadmaps for resilience. They remind us that massive funding, star power, and media buzz cannot save a startup that ignores fundamentals. Quibi teaches us that distribution and customer preferences outweigh production value. Juicero reminds us not to over engineer for trivial problems. Fab.com warns us that growth without retention is toxic. Theranos underscores that in regulated industries, hype cannot substitute for validation. The universal patterns, demand misjudgment, capital misallocation, and execution blindness, are mistakes that any founder can avoid, but only if we take the time to study them. The final takeaway is this: as a founder, you don't need to make every mistake yourself. The graveyard of failed startups is full of lessons waiting to be learned. Study them, internalize them, and you gain an edge. Success isn't guaranteed, but failure doesn't have to be fatal if you use it as your teacher.